I don't have that.
Just turned it off.
Okay, now it's broadcasting. Okay, great.
We're live now.
What's that? Okay.
We're live and they might start coming in.
Yeah, we're good. And we're recording.
There they are. We have 11 participants now.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, thanks, Ed.
We're live.
Okay, welcome everyone. We're just going to get started. I think a few more people are logging in.
Oh, Isuda has joined, so I don't know.
Oh, fantastic. Let me find her.
Hi, Isuda.
Let's see. Isuda. Okay, let me see. I'm going to try to change her role. Let's see. You know, my apologies. I'm not able to, doesn't look like I'm able to get to her as a panelist. I thought I was told that I can. Hey, Ed, can you, Edward, if you look on the attendee list and look for Isuda, can you see if there's a way to make Isuda a panelist? There's supposed to be a way to change. And since you had the broadcast button, I think you may be in the lead seat there.
Sure. I'll work on that.
And right click. Yeah, so we'll get started.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, welcome everyone to our first ACTLA Tutor Forum. I want to welcome you. I'm Ted Blake from Mount San Jacinto College. I'll let the other panelists introduce themselves now. So I'll start with my tutor folks here.
Hi, my name is Juan. I'm a math, physics, and chemistry tutor here at MSJC, and I've been working here for quite a while, a few years now. But yeah, that's about it.
Thanks.
And my name is Chris, and I'm a writing tutor at MSJC, and I've worked here for about 1.5 years.
Thanks. We'll move over to Edward.
Go ahead.
And hi, my name is Erica, and I'm from Costa College. I'm a tutor basically for the adult high school diploma program. So I tutor all the subjects when it comes to math, history, science, English. We also do ESL and citizenship, and I do some math credit classes as well.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Edward Pollard. I'm Faculty Director of Retention Services and Tutoring Academic Support Center here at Mira Costa College. And we have a couple of sites that we do our tutoring in. And I'm also part of ACTLA. Welcome.
And hi, everyone. I'm Margaret Moodian, and I'm tutorial faculty at Irvine Valley College. And I also do work with competency-based education as well.
Great. We've gotten a request. City College of San Francisco, can you hear us a little better now? We'll look at the chat window. Okay, they raised their hand. Okay, great. That sounds good. So there's 3 of us here. We're trying to get the Margaret's tutor Isuda connected in as a panelist. We had some technical issues, so.
I just need her email, so if I can get her email, Margaret, that would be great.
Sure.
We'll do
Would
that.
it be best if I put it in the chat?
Yes, please.
Okay.
So we'll go ahead and get started. We want to welcome you all to this. This idea came out of a work group under ACTLA, which is the Association for College Tutoring and Learning Assistance. And we were talking about hosting forums where we had peer tutors involved to talk about different issues that we face in our centers. And because this is the Undocumented Student Week of Action in California, we thought this would be an apt time to start this off. So welcome to all of you. We have some questions for our tutor panelists that we'll get started with now. And then there is, so a couple of technical things. We are recording this, so if you do want to share this, I believe what I'll be doing is putting it up on YouTube so we can get it captioned. and then we'll share it out with the ACTLA listserv and wherever you heard about it. There's also, on your bottom bar, there's a Q&A function, and we'll take questions after we kind of go through some pre-written questions with our tutors. We'll allow you guys as the audience to ask questions. The Q&A function is going to be better for us than the chat. We'll try to monitor the chat as best we can, but try the question and answer and we'll see how that goes, and use chat as a backup. So we'll be monitoring that, all three of us panelists, as we go through, and we'll go ahead and get started. Our first question is, what are the benefits of working with this population of students? So Juan, Chris, or Erica, whoever wants to take that first, go ahead and jump in.
Okay, I can go for it. For myself, working with this population, and I always tell this to everybody, is it's like traveling all over the world without having to travel, because you get to meet, you know, this diverse population with different culture, different languages, and you get to learn a lot about these students. You know, their journey to this country, and their journey of what they want to do with themselves, and just being part of that, you know, it's something that I enjoy with the students.
I think as well as like focusing on like the differences in all the students, I think it also helps me kind of notice all of the similarities and how a lot of the issues that we see in the Writing Center as it is with the native born students happen to be a lot of the same issues, but if anything, you start to realize just the similarities between the different language barriers and the similarities between how it helps you ESL students and students who don't speak English natively. I've come to notice that I've found better ways to work with a lot of like the grammar issues, a lot of the structure issues, because of the fact it's like I have to look at it from a different angle, and which has effectively helped me work with other students as well, because of the fact I have this different perspective to look at the issue through. Mm-hmm. So you kind of start to realize that even native speakers kind of experience like a sort of language barrier with a lot, which is what's causing a lot of, because I work with writing, so which is what causes, I think, a lot of the sentence structure issues, not understanding sentence and verb, subject and verb, and things like that. And working with students who don't have a perfect grasp of the language has kind of helped me to understand the language better, which helps me in this and actually help other students. So I don't know, I think that's a big help.
All right, so
sounds good.
So I've always noticed that they're very respectful as well. They're very, you know, they try to really, you know, feel like if they're, you know, part of the society. So they're really patient when it comes to learning. I would say a little bit more so than the native population, or not native population, but like regular American population. So I truly feel that they want to understand the material and make connections with what they know. Other students just want to get their assignment over and finished, and they have, and they want to get peace of, some of these students want to get peace of mind as well, by just getting the assignment completed with. So working with all students in general, it is a joy to have that light bulb moment with them, that O moment. And I always notice the longer the O is, the more it sinks in. Okay, so it's really rewarding and accomplishing knowing that they learned something valuable. I truly want to have a good, I truly want them to have a good understanding of math and science. To show them that even what they once thought was too difficult can easily be obtained with patience and persistence. So another joy is when they tell me about their life experiences from other countries, and that kind of makes me feel grateful that we live in such an abundant society where, you know, food is just a drive away, you know, and education is really sought after, and it's really an important thing to have here. Well, good. Yeah, that's good. Thanks, Juan.
You brought up a great point about how there's joy with working with this population. It truly is so rewarding, and as you mentioned, they're so respectful, which makes it easier as well.
Great. So, and I think we can have, I think if any of the three of you, and I guess we're not going to get Isuda in, doesn't look like. It would be great if we could. And Margaret, if you want to chime in with anything you guys talked about. But our second question, so I guess what I'm saying is Erica, Juan, and Chris, we don't have to have each of you answer every question. We kind of go through and maybe a couple of you answer, and then we'll get to the Q&A from the group as well. So number two, this is a little open-ended as well. What professional and personal skills must a tutor have to work effectively with this population of students? We're all interested in that in terms of our training or what you guys could share with the group.
This is something that I know that isn't necessarily a part of all of the training, but just because of my major, I've taken intercultural classes. And I think just having I think it'd be great if we could incorporate a little bit more of a cultural understanding into training. In terms of focus on high context, low context, and how different cultures respond to the way we speak. Because a lot of times we're used to speaking one way, but you kind of have to understand that not everybody. I mean, this should go hand in hand with anybody you work with, period. And it kind of already is there, but I think that in terms of personal and professional skills, I would definitely say this is a personal skill that everybody should have, but it should by all means be a professional skill.
Yeah, that cultural proficiency.
Yeah,
we're talking about. Yeah,
being able to kind of put yourself in the shoes of somebody who is less comfortable than you in a situation, to where you do kind of acknowledge the fact that that you are in a position to where they might be looking at you as somebody who I don't want to. I'd use the word privileged, because of the fact you are somebody in this position to where they feel like they're somehow.
And we were talking about that with students who maybe come out to you because you're in a position of authority at the college.
Exactly,
you're a learning professional,
yeah.
And so that may happen. And so I think we need training on, how to react sensitively and helpfully in that case, because I think some tutors wouldn't expect that, and they might miss an opportunity to really connect with a student. Juan or Erica, do you guys have a response to that?
Yeah, and I have something to add with what you said when it comes to the connecting with the students. It's also assessing where that student, where that language is at, because if you are working with a student that is really struggling when it comes to articulating certain things, we also have to see that our language, like Chris said, we have to make sure that our English is not what we usually kind of how we usually talk. We have to kind of use simpler terms, because I've seen where tutors are trying to speak with an immigrant student, and they use these elaborate words that you see the confusion on their face. So I think that skill of knowing when to kind of use that, that language that's a little bit more simpler, be able to assess right away that, hey, I really kind of just, lower, not lower, but make my vocabulary a little bit more simpler, where the student can understand and basically understand what I'm trying to articulate, you could say.
That's great. I was going to kind of move to the next question, as I think we're kind of right there, which is, do you guys have guidance for faculty coordinators who are working with this population of students? We're wanting to welcome them into our centers, but in terms of our training for you guys, or what advice would you have for us faculty, who I think are probably a lot in the audience?
Ted, before you move on, I think Isuda also is chiming in on the last question.
Oh, very good.
Maybe we can read that. I'll read it for what's posted. The answer to this question from is that this population has been through many experiences that non-immigrant folks never have. So we need to try to understand and consider their experiences and conditions. There are many that I cannot tell every single one of them, but they need to feel comfortable with us, and that happens by them knowing that we understand their situation. I just wanted to make sure that these SUDA is heard. Right?
Thank you, Edward.
That's great. Thanks. Yeah.
So going back to this next question, what can you tell us as faculty coordinators that we absolutely need to know? And there's a lot of coordinators maybe listening, possibly. Who wants to jump in? Tell it like it is.
Oh, go ahead.
Sure. All right, so don't really treat them any differently than you would other students. Treat everyone with respect and patience as you would normally. With all tutees, I repeat important information twice or sometimes 3 or 5 times if needed. The first 2 times I repeat it exactly the same way. And then the 3rd or 4th time, I explain it in a different way. I do this because I believe it makes them think a little bit about the information I just told them. And yeah, just pretty much that. Just repeat it and then change it up a little bit. A little technique that you could use in tutoring sessions.
Well,
That kind of goes with
as a
Erica.
coordinator,
Yeah.
I know that's your excellent skill set, but what would you tell Ted or myself as coordinators, or Margaret? What do we need to know about working with this population, since we're not on the front line tutoring, but we're the supervisors, right? What do we need to know from all of you as tutors?
Can you say that again? I'm sorry. Can you say that again?
What advice do you give us as coordinators? So maybe not Ted, because is he your supervisor?
Yeah.
So maybe me as a faculty coordinator in a learning center, do you have any feedback for us that we need to critically think about? And you don't have to answer that. It could be Erica or it could be Chris as well. But I don't want to put you on the spot like I have to do that.
Yeah, I can't really think of anything off the top of my head. Just maybe, treat them like you would.
Erica's got something here. Erica's got something. What would you tell me or Ted as the
I
coordinator?
think that you need to understand how much it took for us to get here. That it was hard for us to get to where we're at, and imagine us that we still have a long road to go, but understand our struggle. Understand that we need that help, that guidance. So
The tutor or the student you're talking about?
no, the student that we.
So you're speaking from your own experience, right?
And from other
Okay.
students' experiences. That for us it wasn't easy to get here, and also that we need that guidance, we need that support. Just being open to basically how we feel, and not making us feel that we are being judged in a certain way, just because we don't understand maybe everything that's being said to us, or even the language barrier. Just because, and this is just my experience, I felt that I couldn't open up to maybe a faculty member or staff member, because I felt that I was going to be judged or be like, well, you can't participate in this. Simple example, I was the vice president of the Community Learning Center for Mira Costa College, and we had a San Francisco trip. Well, actually a Sacramento trip. And we were supposed to represent our college, and that meant to fly over there. And at that time I was scared, and I didn't tell anybody that I was undocumented, so I didn't have that, that relationship with a staff member or even the person that I was working with, my supervisor at that time, for when it came to the ASG. I didn't feel comfortable disclosing that information, and I took the risk of just going, which thank God everything turned out to be okay. But I think that's something that it's very important to have, that open-minded, and making that student feel comfortable if they have any questions, that they can come to you.
Yeah, the struggles that these students go through is just so immense, and everything is just so much harder when English is your second language as well. Just the smallest things that we take for granted, they are just more difficult when you can't speak the language. So thanks for bringing up those points.
Yeah. This isn't so much, I don't think it's something for faculty coordinators. I don't know who this would be directed towards. All I know is that one of the issues I see with a lot of the students who come in who are not native English speakers is when they're writing their papers, not every one of them, but I know that some of them come in, and I don't know who the professors are, but a lot of times it seems like they have like, I don't know, it seems like the focus is really harsh on grammar. And that's like the last thing as like a non-native speaker of any language that you're gonna grasp. Like, and I just feel like having like some way, and I don't, like I said, I don't know who this would be directed towards, but I think that there's some way to get that point across that, you know, as long as you are able to just understand what the student is trying to say, that is a huge step in the right direction. So I don't know if that's like, that's not really advice by any means, but it's kind of just like, you know, something that I'd like to see more focus on.
But it's the small part where we are, as a tutor, we may be in between the faculty and the student and saying to the student, you know, yeah, it may take a long time to get your syntax absolutely perfect, but yeah, your ideas, because that's typically what we find is for an ESL student or an English learner, there may be sophistication of the ideas there. It's just working through the grammar and the syntax, just as if we were writing a paper in Mandarin or something.
Yeah.
Probably we conceive of the idea, and
Yeah.
so many of our students, and maybe just telling them like, hey, you know, being that encouragement, but also for a coordinator, this is where we could come in to communicate to the English department and say, hey, why don't you think about how you might, you know, at least reward the clarity of the ideas in the organization.
Yeah.
And maybe make a division and communicate that to the students. Something
Because,
like
because
that.
yeah, I don't know how, that's what I was gonna say, because I don't know how much communication there is between coordinators and faculty. But
Yep. There's
Yeah.
quite a lot, actually, as a faculty member, I'm part of the English department. So.
Margaret, you want to chime in?
First, you need to be comfortable speaking the language, and then the rest comes after it. Isuda had a comment as well. We need to try and be their friend in a way that they are not embarrassed or afraid of sharing their questions and situations with us. I have tried this and it's been very successful because in this way the students share their concerns and get advice and solutions from them. ESL students are always afraid of making mistakes when they are speaking to a person they're not comfortable with, but when they feel friendly, they are not afraid at all to make mistakes. That's great advice.
That's great.
I would also encourage, if you're faculty out there, to start a cultural competency proficiency training program through professional development. I think that's, as faculty and coordinators, we have a responsibility to share promising practices when working with a variety of populations, including immigrant populations. And so it's really critical for faculty to take that, not just to put it all on the tutors either. Like, hey, you know, we're gonna hire this diverse set of tutors and then we're good, right? I think it's important to keep training ourselves as well as our colleagues in these realms, because we don't know it all. And some of our graduate work hasn't prepared us to do this, even though we have all of our titles behind our name. It might have been one class, or it might have been a focus, but not really delved into as well.
I have to plug my husband's book. He wrote the big book on intercultural competence. I'll put the title in the.
That would be great.
In the chat, that'd be wonderful. So let's move on to another question here. And I'd love to hear, I know that each of our tutors here have some probably favorite stories of working with students, and this might tie into this one. Is what did you need to learn in order to, as a tutor, to meet these students' needs? And maybe if there's a story around that you could tell briefly with that might illustrate that a little bit.
All right, I got one.
Okay.
So in working with a Middle Eastern woman, she was about in her 40s on physics material. She gave very insightful information about how she was thinking. She said, I read, but I feel like I'm not understanding the physics part of it. I'm more focused in on just reading the words. And how I interpreted that was her ability to understand English needed to be reinforced before she took something on as abstract as physics. She asked for advice about what to do with her class because she was already failing, unfortunately. And I advised her to still go to the class, still take notes, and then ask the teacher if after she dropped, if she could still attend the class, and also advise her to take reading and English classes to improve on that before she took, and then only then, once she feels comfortable reading and everything like that, then go ahead and take physics at a later date.
Yeah, and so in a sense, you might have needed to learn how to teach some
Yeah.
reading skills.
Yeah, exactly.
In terms of working through the textbook material.
Exactly. Yeah. Reading. Yeah, definitely. Reading skills are very important to possess before we, because that's always a stepping stone for everything else. So master that first, and then come back to whatever you need to accomplish.
Yeah.
And for me, what I've learned is that different students have different learning styles. In this story, I love to tell this story because it taught me a lot. And I will never forget his name. His name was Francisco Venegas, and he was an ESL student. And he was basically just learning English, and he would go to the tutoring every day. And I don't understand. He was very frustrated. So basically, I had to assess where he was at right away, and that's something that I learned in training, that I had to assess the student, and I saw that he needed a lot of help. So we started with the basics, with the ABCs, and the pronunciation. But what I learned with basically tutoring him was that he didn't even know how to write. So even in his native language, he did not know how to write. So we started practicing the ABCs, how to write them, and it took him a good couple months to just to even learn how to write the letters. After maybe a good year, he knew the ABCs. He knew basic questions like, "Hi, my name is Francisco," in English. So I was very surprised. I was like, "You made a huge, you could say, leap." And at the same time, I also reinforced, like, look where you were and look where you're at now. You're progressing. Keep going. I was encouraging him.
Yeah.
I actually dictated the letters to his name, and since we weren't at that level where he knew how to read, it was more of the pronunciation, and he when it comes to the words, so he was able to kind of just pronounce certain, like cat, dog. And I dictated the words to his name, and I asked him, "Do you know what you just wrote?" And he's like, "No." And when I told him, "That's your first and last name," he started crying because he told me, "I have never written my first or last name." And it brought me to tears because I felt I had a big impact on that person.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that was something very important to me, that I made a difference in somebody's life. So that would be my story.
That's great. Yeah.
Right there, yes.
That's wonderful.
Isuda also has something, which he said, I needed to learn about their level of English, meaning reading, speaking, and listening. But more important than that is to know their level of self-confidence and if they panic easily or not. So this has nothing to do with the material, but everything to do with the affective domain.
Yeah, exactly.
How is the student responding? How are they talking confidently or not? Do they panic when they get put on the spot or when they have to say something in English? So very good point. Thank you.
Yeah, that is a good point. It's always good to reinforce confidence in someone, even when they get it wrong, because that'll just kind of soften that blow to their ego that they could have taken, and it kind of gives them that little push to keep going. And I always really try to encourage my students to keep at it, no matter what. That eventually they'll get it. Eventually it'll just click, and they'll, if they're persistent enough, that they'll accomplish great things.
Yeah, good point about not having them give up, because I know a lot of times they want to give up, but
Yeah.
you just got to encourage them to keep going.
Exactly. Yeah.
What since the question was like, what did I need to learn? I will say that one thing I learned, and this is something like, again, one thing I've learned is that like a lot of like, it's just how individualized learning is for every single student. There aren't ESL students and native speakers. You know, there's literally this particular student who might also be ASL, but it really like, it's just how much I have to individualize the style of tutoring to fit their needs specifically, because not every ESL student is struggling with the same issues I've seen. And like, so one of the things I needed to learn is how I learn language, is how I have like just looking back at like the times where I've built my vocabulary up, how I've picked things up through context, and like just kind of going back and backtracking, like how I've learned second languages in the past. And I've just sat there and I've had to really examine my own learning process to kind of put myself into their shoes, which is something that like, it seems obvious, but at the same time, I don't know, like I might have learned another language or at least part of it, but I've never actually thought about my process behind it. And I think that was a big thing in terms of like, what did I need to learn? I needed to kind of go back and examine how I've gone through the process.
Yeah, that metacognitive step. That's good. Good. Thanks. We've got a couple questions in the Q&A, so keep those coming because we've just got a couple more here, and then we'll move to your questions. So use that question answer tab on the bottom. I think we'll move to this question of how we phrased it was, how do you decide, and this is for the tutors, to be directive or non-directive in a tutoring session? And kind of a follow-up, does that change from session to session with the same students? Because clearly in tutoring, we want to empower students to have, like Juan was talking about, those O moments. The longer the O, the more they're getting it on their own, because they really do have to, we're sort of like the guide on the side, you know, to try to help them find that empowerment and confidence to do well in school. But at the same time, if we don't step in when they're struggling and direct them, we're kind of withholding information that they need because there's nowhere else to get it. And a lot of times the faculty aren't going to stop and say, this is what you need to do well. It's going to be on you guys. So I guess what's the balance between being directive and non-directive? How do you ascertain that? And what are some of your experience? And it may change from session to session, even with the same student. Whoever wants to jump in on that.
Yeah, I'll jump in on it.
Okay.
So the more a student knows, the less directive you need to be. When a student is well prepared for the material, it comes natural for them to want to explain the problem to you. And I came up with a little equation. It's actually, what was it?
You're a STEM person.
Yeah. So it's student understanding times directiveness equals 1. And as 1 goes up, the other one has to compensate to keep it at 1. So that's kind of my little tidbit on that.
So the more they know, the less
Yeah.
directive you would become.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Do you have that equation on the board there? Can you write it on the board?
Right on the board.
For our visual learners?
Before the end, we'll get it up there. I'll go get a
Yeah.
whiteboard marker. I don't see it.
And I couldn't follow you because I really needed to see it. But I think I got it. So
As far as deciding to be directive or non-directive, I think a lot of times the student kind of is a good assessor of themselves in that regard. Like a student who is moving ahead of you, like when a student really knows it depends on, this is where I wish I would have like read through this a little bit more securely, whatever. But in terms of like direction, I kind of see that as more of like, kind of like when you're growing a tree, you have a little stake next to the tree to help it grow, it help it stay along the side of it and grow straight. But after a while, you notice that the tree is much bigger than the stake and you don't need the stake anymore because it's thick and it's obvious. And I think that with students, it's kind of like the same thing. A lot of times you'll start to notice that the student seems like they're looking elsewhere on the paper, or they might go ahead and bring up a question that is kind of more in depth to what they're asking for help with. So like, I'm trying to be as clear as I can here, but I think in general, the students kind of are a good like like gauge of that on their own, in the sense that they will, what they're coming to you for help with, usually if you have to like kind of read between the lines a little bit of what they're saying, in the sense that does it seem like they're, when they're asking this question, are they confused about the question that they're asking? In that case, be more directive. If the student knows exactly the question that they're asking, probably be less directive, because at that point they have a clear they've identified what they don't know. If the student can't even really securely identify what they don't know, then that means that they definitely need direction, because they don't even have a grasp of what it is. It's too abstract at that point. But if a student has like a precise question, usually they're on the right track already. They understand the concept enough to find where the holes in their knowledge are. And that's pretty much that.
Yeah, and to add to that, to Juan and Chris, just to even get there, we need to assess and ask probing questions, because that's the way we're going to get basically to knowing if they get the concept or not, or to be direct or very directive. Because if we ask probing questions, that's where we get to see, oh, that student is not getting, oh, they need more, you know, more help. And once you kind of break it down and you're able to see a little bit more, you're able to assess, am I going to be directive, or, you know, just be indirective, and just kind of go from there. But basically what they said is just kind of just to start off, to be able to make that quick assessment and probing questions.
And I guess yeah, that's great. I think especially, I don't know if any of you've had experiences with someone who maybe has come out to you as undocumented, you know, and in terms of, is it different here? Because I know a lot of these students are insecure, and, you know, they're not sure where to turn for accurate information, because obviously it's pretty high stakes if there's a mistake or something, you know. So I don't know if there's if you have any thoughts on that.
I can't really think of anything off the top of my head.
Looks like we've got some chat from. Yeah. So let's read that as from. Gosh.
I'll read it. It's for my
Yeah,
student.
thank you, Margaret. That'd be great.
It is definitely right that the more the student knows, the less directive we need to be, but also the less passionate and interested the student is, we need to be more directive. I had students who did not like what they were studying but needed to. So in this case, we need to encourage them to keep going. Also, if there's a student who knows more than enough and expresses his knowledge, it means that he only needs someone to tell him good job, and it comes from their self-confidence.
Yeah, those are very good points. Yeah, really boosting that person's confidence. I could do a lot, because then they'll try to make an attempt at something that they wouldn't have otherwise tried to do. You know, so that's a very good point.
I think that was a really good point about finding passion too, because I sit there and I remember when I was trying to decide what my major was going to be, and it was kind of like, I remember someone gave me advice that if that you learn to love what you're good at, you know. And it's true. Like the more I feel like I know something, the more a person feels like they know something, the more apt they are to talking about it, and the more they find that passion, just because of the fact they already have a foundation of knowledge. And I think that's a big part of being directive is, you know, when students haven't found the interest, it's because of the fact I definitely think passion is a huge part of it. If they're passionate about it, that probably means that they know more about it.
And I just wanted to add to that, and something that I do tell the students, I like to let them know that if you stick to what you know, you will never learn, because you just doing what you're comfortable instead of going outside the box. And I do tell them, I know it's scary, but if you stick to what you know, you're never gonna learn anything. And that's with everything. Even when the students, they're like, oh, you know, I love to, you know, dance. Well, I don't think you were born dancing. I think you learned some techniques along the way that made you a great dancer, you know. So it's just, you know, taking that risk, you know, of failing and getting up again and trying again.
You know, just to add, you just triggered something for me, which was Denzel Washington made several either commencement speeches or when he won the Academy not too long ago, a couple of years ago. And basically he said, you know, fall down 7 times, get back up 8. And that's just how it is, right? It's like when we struggle, who's there to brush us off and to get back up? And it's a simple comment, but it's a huge concept. And not everybody gets up 8. But if we can, I think for immigrant students, they've gotten up many times. And so I think we have to remember, and it also tests our own resilience as practitioners, as educators, that where's our bar, right? Where's our line? Because we can get frustrated. As coordinators, we get involved with the politics, et cetera, of the campuses, et cetera. But we keep getting back up for our students. So.
That's great.
Yeah, and what an honor to be there to support them and help them get up as well. I mean, that's why it's such a privilege to be in this business.
Mm-hmm.
I totally agree. So I think we're going to go, we've got about 20 minutes left all. We're going to go to some audience questions now. So we can jump in on these. The first one comes from Laura Rantala. Thank you for this one. She says, in thinking about the idea of help-seeking behaviors, it is a challenge at times to get all students in our doors, tutoring, learning centers, tech support, etc. Do you have any ideas to help motivate or make it more comfortable for undocumented students to walk in initially? And I think this is where we'll have our tutor panel respond, but if you guys want to also respond in the chat to kind of network for each other as well, because I think there's probably a lot of great ideas out there as well. But to our students, like, what do you guys think would help motivate undocumented students to just come into our learning centers? What could we do to make it more comfortable, inclusive, just to get them initially in? Because I think we think we're open, but sometimes maybe that hallway is intimidating for people. I don't know.
So I do a lot of things to get students. The first thing that I do is classroom visits. When it comes to where I work at, I'm able to do classroom visits and encourage the students come to, the center, and we can help you with any questions that you have. And I also make a point that, it doesn't have to be academic, exactly like when it comes to homework. It could be study skills. It could be, even with the ESL students, it could be pronunciation, conversation. So once they hear that, they're like, oh, I can go there, and work on my, my conversation skills. Again, these students are the most shyest, and especially with the cultural background that some students have, is they're more like, oh, they're busy, I don't want to bother them. They kind of peek in the window, they open the door a little bit, and they're kind of shy, or like, oh, it's busy, and then I don't want to bother them. But we have to kind of go out there and make them feel comfortable for them to come into the room. So what I do, I also like to, walk around the campus and just talk to the students, make that connection, so that way they're comfortable to go into that room. Because I get a lot of students, are you going to be there? Because I already built that connection with the students. I'm like, yeah, I'm there at this time. So then they start getting comfortable with just going to see you. And then after they get into that room, they feel comfortable with the environment. They're like, okay, so even if she's not there, I could go there and study and do my homework, or have somebody else help me. So it's just like slowly, like baby steps, but being able to, reach out and, grasp that student and get their attention to be able to come into the center to get help. I think that's the most important part.
I think just to add to that, I have this, I don't know if you can see it, you probably can't, there, but it's an ally button, right? Undocu ally training button. And there's also a poster on my window, and also on Erica's site where she works. I believe you have one as well.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of a signal that this is a safe space. And, we've heard a lot about safe spaces across campuses, and we need to create those, with visuals, with people smiling, with resources, so that people say, I can come here and not only just get academic work, I can also get resources for the community, for my situation, etc. So
Well, I always sound like a student record when I said we all need to be really student-centered. And I always talk about how it's so important to be student-centered, especially in the Learning Center. Isuda says, going to the classes and speaking about our center is something that we normally do, but I think that in order to make them feel comfortable and use the tutoring center, we can share stories and talk about the ups and downs briefly to get their attention and let them find connections with our stories.
One thing that I really like that our tutoring center did, or at least the writing center, I know that on our poster for the writing center, we have quotes from the actual tutors, like, and how the tutoring center has helped them in the past. And just emphasizing kind of obviously just the fact that, you know, that in the writing center, there's 200 level students coming in, getting help with their essays, as well as the, you know, the below 100, the point is that there are English majors coming in, getting help with the same things that the students who literally are just taking English as a general ed and never want to see it again. And like kind of emphasizing the fact that, you know, like there's definitely, you know, we're there for the whole student body. And then the other thing I really try to emphasize too is that it's, even if you don't feel like you need help, just coming in there and just working and knowing that you have somebody there if you do have a question is like a huge, I don't know, for me, I used to work in the writing center just doing my essays, and it just made me feel more comfortable. Just kind
Yeah,
of,
it's nice to know you're not alone and there's support, whether you need it or not.
yeah.
Yeah, we have another question in the question answer. This is from Liz. Thank you. She says, I'm also wondering, well, first of all, she asked, how comfortable do you feel in working with students who have various disabilities? Did you get training that addresses that need? And then her second question is a little more relevant to this conversation we're just having. I'm also wondering about whether and how they steer students to services like housing insecurity, legal services, etc. That's very important to our undocumented students, right? And I guess that's another way. Or if the students just try to steer clear and kind of stay out of the way and not noticed.
First, we'd have to know what kind of, like as a tutor, we'd have to know what kind of resources are available.
Yep.
You know, so that's maybe one thing we could work on is informing what the tutors, what types of resources there are.
Yeah, it's a great idea. I know on our campus, there's a lot of things going on this week, especially, but all the time with, you know, we've got legal advice that comes on campus. There's a lot of energy around DACA and all these various opportunities. And I think bringing those into the center, but also, you know, bringing social services into our center. So it's a hub and a place to get help and that information, because sometimes it's hard to find it, you know, when we have students.
And I agree with that the resources that we have, it's not out there in front of the students. We also need to know our services and be very familiar that way when a student comes to us, we know where to direct them, you know, instead of kind of just like, I don't know and being unsure, but if we're 100% familiar with the services we offer, we can direct them right away and get that help for them. And then for the first part, when it comes to the question about disabilities, we are trained when it comes to disabilities, like working with veterans that have the PTSD, and then also working with students with other disabilities. In my case, I'm a little bit more familiar just because both of my kids have learning disabilities. So I'm a little bit more aware of what are those signs to kind of look for when it comes to tutoring a student that has a disability. And with those students, you have to be more patient and be able to know how to assess their learning style right away. Most of the students are visuals. So just being able to tutor that student in a more visual way and maybe more in detail, that helps the students a lot more.
Yeah, you know what I'm kind of thinking, Ted, is maybe we can make like a little sign, like the little triangle sign with all the resources.
Yeah,
That
definitely.
would be a good idea.
There's a lot of good ideas we're getting. Let's look at a couple other questions. Ed, do you have any that you want to ask in the Q&A forum?
I'm trying to keep up with information here.
I know.
There's a really good one that talks about how in California can undocumented students be told that tutor staff and faculty do not have to report them. If the student reveals an undocumented status, is this true? That we legally don't have to report them so the student can feel safe in that setting. Is there a website or document that provides guidance for tutors, staff, and faculty about what they are required to do and what? I'm going to post the California Community Chancellor's Office website on that piece. The chancellor is 110% behind not reporting, and that's for for all 114 colleges in the California Community College system. So I'll post their information, and I'll do that right now. And there will be also a recorded session that we're recording this, and we will be sending that out on the listserv. And I think those are the two questions I wanted to address. So I'm not going to answer that right now, but I'm going to post the information. Okay.
Yeah, and it will be recorded, and I just need to make sure it's captioned before we post it, just so it's accessible for everyone. Let me just look through here.
I also put it in the chat. I'll put it in the chat as well. So
for our tutors, this is kind of, we've got about 10 minutes left. I don't know, Ed, I mean, there is a poll. Do you see a bar on your side where it says to release the poll?
let's see if there's a
See that or not? I put a very simple one together for y'all just so we get some feedback. But I think right now,
launch polling, so I can launch it.
yeah, I think go ahead and launch it so folks can go ahead and take part before they leave if they have to go to a meeting. Thank you.
So that's launched now.
Okay, great, thanks. So go ahead and fill that out. I think this is an opportunity for the tutors. If you guys, do you have questions of each other? I'm curious to know how, because we have an opportunity to have people from across campuses. So Suda, Erica, Juan, or Chris. Do you have any questions for each other?
Yeah, I got a question. How do you steer 2Ds that are socializing to be back on track with their assignment? How do you do that without sounding, rude or invasive?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question.
So how do you steer students that are socializing and not really doing, any studying? How do you get them back to the study without seeming like, invasive in their case?
So what I do, I'm not very blunt with like, oh, we have to get back to what we're doing. I kind of engage with them, whatever their topic is about, and then slowly veer back to it. That way they don't seem like, oh, she just blew me off or doesn't care what I have to say. Kind of engage with them, give some importance and acknowledge what they're saying, but also veer them back to what you're working on.
Okay.
And an example for that is I was working with a math student, and I love cars, and that student started talking about cars. So, I kind of engaged in that for a little bit, for a couple of minutes, and then after that, I'm like, oh, well, look at this problem. We're working with circumference and radius. That's like the wheel of the car, and I kind of just veered it back to, more of the academics instead of what the topic.
Yeah, that's a good point you brought up. That's great.
Any other questions or?
Chris,
go ahead.
Okay. No, I was gonna say something that I've seen a lot of, and what I'd like to know how other people have worked with this, is how do you work with a student who seems completely unmotivated? I have one student that I work with in SI, and he's very unmotivated in terms of just doing the general activities and things like that. And tutoring, same thing. I've seen students come in, and it's like they come in for the tutoring, they spend the time with you, but they don't seem like they're responding to any of it.
When I come across students that are very motivated and they just do the work just because they have to do it, or just do the next day and they have to do it, I try to dig a little bit deeper. Maybe what are their goals? What are they trying to work for? Maybe they're just like, they don't like that class, but they wanna maybe pursue something in career, maybe in engineering, but they hate history, So I kind of just like to dig deep when it comes to what their goals are, and be like, hey, well, if you need you need to complete your general ed in order to be an engineer, and just kind of veer them to basically look at the big picture. this is what your goal is, let's work towards that, and get them motivated, get them like excited about what they're doing, about what their goals are, because they're kind of stuck into, I hate this class. And once a student gets into that mindset, I hate this class, they forget all about their goals. So we have to kind of encourage them and remind them what are they working for.
That's the beautiful thing about DACA, that it was education as a path to citizenship, which was, I think that motivation was it was intrinsic and extrinsic, and it's a great opportunity. Yeah. Talking about motivation and goals.
And I think DACA was basically a big, trigger to the students where, I wanna do this. Now I can be an engineer. Now I can work in my field, because before that, they're like, I'm going to school, but what can I do after I graduate? What can I do after I get my degree? It's just a waste of time. But I think what DACA just gave that, that dream back to the students, saying like, hey, I can actually, get my degree in this and actually work in what I love, what I want to do for the rest of my life.
Yeah, I think my experience with working with anyone who was part of DACA was highly motivating. I didn't have any trouble with motivation with those folks. We have a follow-up question to Suzanne's question from Howard. Thank you. Is it important for a tutor to know if students are undocumented when working with them? And is it appropriate to ask them? That's a good question.
In my experience, it's not important. I personally don't ask that. If I do find out that they're immigrants and they're undocumented, is because they find the confidence to actually tell me their stories, because I build that trust. Again, everything when it comes to talking about sensitive, situations, is because there's that bridge. And I think with me opening up to them and what my struggle has been and where I am today, they have found that trust where, hey, I am undocumented and I don't know if I could actually go to college, because I've gotten a lot of students, they're like, well, I'm just gonna get my high school diploma and that's it. And I do ask them like, why? It's like, oh, because is it because you don't feel confident that you can actually, do well in school? And because we have built that trust, they do tell me, oh, because, I'm undocumented. It's like, and that's where everything starts. I'm like, you can, that's where I know all my resources. And then I could be like, you can do this, you can do that. You don't need, Social Security. I'm not going to ask you for that. You can, and I veer them to that. And then they start getting excited, continue their education. And for me, just to kind of be able to tell them all the resources that we offer, it's great to see when a student transfer to, the campus with all the, getting their math, their history, and they get excited about, going and, basically achieving their goal, which is getting an education, and for me, that's very rewarding. That's extremely, just, I don't know, it just makes me happy to just kind of see like the students, getting excited about it. And all that information when it comes to undocumented, it's not important. And if a student trusts you enough to let you know if they're undocumented, it just, if they just be that support system for them if they ever need to talk. Because, when it comes to even family members getting deported, it's not just the family members, it's also a burden on them and how they feel. And then also having that, that pressure, of, school and having to deal with those problems at home, they'll have that trust and confidence to come to you and just kind of vet. And that actually helps the student as well.
Yeah, that's great. So Margaret, do you want to read? Asuda typed in some responses to this topic.
Sure. She said for their motivation, I think this was for the last one, I would encourage by praising them when they were able to answer a question, even a small one, and this will lead to teach more and help more. Thank you, Asuda.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's great.
And I've posted several websites from the Chancellor's Office, as well as a really good website on immigrantsrising.org. They have a wealth of information and resources. They have videos of students. So just a wealth of resources that you can really bring into your web library, if you will. And anyway, please, they're embedded within the chat as well as the questions and answers. But I think we're pretty much out of time right now.
Yeah,
Thank
we
you
can
for
certainly.
sharing those, Edward.
What's that?
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing those. And I just wanted to end by saying, you know, I'm always impressed with you all, the student tutors. I'm constantly amazed by how knowledgeable you are, how smart you are, and how thoughtful you are. And we had mentioned earlier about people sometimes not wanting to continually learn, but I just love learning in the love working in the Learning Center because I'm constantly learning from all of you and the students as well. So thank you.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I want to thank everybody for coming. I know we're basically out of time, and we're so excited to be part of this week. And so I encourage you all in the next couple of days to look around your campuses if you're in California. If not, maybe visit some of our websites to see what we have going on to support our valuable undocumented students. These are our students, and we need everyone. So thank you all for coming. I don't know, Ed, if you have any final words. Please use the poll. Let us know through the ACTLA listserv or the poll, please, how this was for you if you'd like to see more. Just a way to outreach, get students to talk to each other, to hear from students, and to kind of talk and network together. And don't forget that the ACTLA conference is coming up in the end of April. So if you have a presentation you'd like to bring students to present on this topic or any others, we'd love to see that as well. Edward, anything else?
Just thank you for participating in our forum. We look forward to doing more of these. I think hearing from our tutor, student, paraprofessionals, they have a lot of wisdom that they can share with us. Usually we struggle with webinars sometimes where we have the experts in the room, and we felt that today the experts in the room are our tutors and the ones closest working on really the front line. So I want to thank you, everybody, for participating and trusting us to have a deeper dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Juan, Erica, Chris, and
My
Suda.
pleasure.
Hey, Ted, can we stay on if we close it to participants?
Let's try it. All right.
Can you brief a little bit? Or does it end at right now?
Let's try it. We'll see.
I think as people get off, then we might be the only ones left, I think. I'm seeing.
I don't know if stopping the broadcast will.
Oh, okay. So maybe we have a different meeting then.
Yeah, if not, I can set up a Zoom real quick and invite you
I
guys.
can stop recording.
Let's do that. Yeah. Thanks, everybody. Yeah.
Okay, let's stop recording now. Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay.
Okay. I'm stopping recording in the